I don't even know if we need a silly intro for Tyson to talk about this movie he wants to talk about, which is
The Boy and the Heron. Shall I go on?
insert silly joke here, but they can go on. Got hair on the face.
Got hair on the face. Got hair on the face.
Got hair on the face. But in more seriousness, let's talk about Boy and the Hair on the face. No, just the Boy and the Heron.
Okay.
Tyson, go ahead.
I just wanted to talk about The Boy and the Heron, I guess. Give my informal review, just my thoughts on it, because we did a short where we kind of talk about how 3 animated bird movies came out at the same time recently, and this was one of them. We talk about why that might happen sometimes, because of how long the production process on a Studio Ghibli film is. I could believe that they heard that Miyazaki was making possibly his last movie, and other studios were like, it's an animated bird movie? Okay, let's release an animated bird movie. Let's make animated bird movies. And Aardman was like, well, I guess we've got Chicken Run. Let's make Chicken Run 2 finally. And Illumination was like, we got a script about ducks. I don't know. This is just my speculation on what the studios might have thought and like why that might have happened, because that's kind of what happens sometimes. More so, I just wanted to talk about The Boy and the Heron because I took our other musical collaborator on Instagram, OBNOOT. Follow us on Instagram. It's possibly Miyazaki's last film.
He has had quite a few last films. I'll believe it when I see it.
It's a very interesting work of his. It's very beautiful to watch, just of course, because it's a Miyazaki Studio Ghibli film, but it's dealing with a lot of the same types of themes that he's dealt with a lot. It's a boy who's like coming of age. A lot of time he deals with like young girls that are coming of age. The very opening of the movie is it's set in the war, and both Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli have dealt with that theme a lot. They've had a lot of movies that have had a backdrop of the war going on. It's a lot of it's usually like some form of World War II or World War I going on, or there's a war going on within the world itself. Like in Howl's Moving Castle, there's a war going on. In Porco Rosso, he's a ex-Italian World War I pilot. Something that's not Miyazaki, but it's Studio Ghibli. Grave of the Fireflies is also set during World War II. So yeah, it's something that they dealt with a lot. This one is also set during the war. I'm not sure why they deal with that a lot. I mean, it is Japan, and so they tend to like have a lot of stuff set during World War II or having to deal with the ramifications of war, especially with World War II. It starts off with this boy trying to get to his mother who was at the hospital, I believe, because she worked there. It's just been bombed and it's ablaze, and the way that the animation is done is really amazing. Like the animation is so fluid and swirling, and like it really felt like it was trying to capture what it's like to actually be like in a fire where you can barely see and the smoke's like kind of making everything like hazy and wiggly and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's really, really well animated. But again, that's expected from a Miyazaki movie or from a Ghibli movie. It's really, really well animated. It's also dealing with a lot of the same types of themes that Miyazaki and Ghibli have dealt with before, with those like young characters who are coming of age, but dealing with said coming of age and like changing family dynamics. Maybe they had to move to a new location. Maybe they lost a mother, like in this case, dealing with a new family member, like integration, like with Grave of the Fireflies. A lot of these works that Miyazaki was making were influenced by things like Wizard of Oz and Lewis Carroll, like Alice in Wonderland and Chronicles of Narnia, where it's young coming of age characters that are traveling through a portal into another realm, and that realm is an allegory for the stuff that they're dealing with in their life right now. In The Boy and the Heron specifically, it's he lost his mom, and his dad has now, who works in the factories for the war, and he's like not present a lot of the time. He has now married his wife's sister. So the wife is dead, and now he's married her sister, and they look really similar. So the boy is struggling really hard with this, you look exactly like my mom, but you're not my mom. It's just struggling to accept this. And I was like getting kind of like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs kind of vibes, because there's like 7 or 8 of these like little withered grannies that are all like hustling around, and they're like Miyazaki grannies, so they all like have exaggerated features and stuff. The movie kind of takes a while to get where it's going. It's kind of long, but I feel like it's dealing with a lot of these same themes with these other movies that he's made, but it's dealing with a lot of them in a more mature way, because it seems like it's trying to talk about how to deal with your changing world, like how to cultivate your world the way you want to live it, while at the same time dealing with the changes that might happen to your world that you can't control, because you can't control everything. But it doesn't get to explaining a lot of this stuff at all, especially directly in the movie at all. The boy like he starts getting coaxed by this heron, and the heron like it just starts talking to him saying your presence is needed at this location. Basically he kind of wants to accept it, but he's also very reluctant. And I was getting a lot of vibes from this movie from things that were derivative of the same types of fantasy works that I was talking about, like Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland and stuff. But I was getting vibes of like Pan's Labyrinth and Labyrinth. It's like especially in Pan's Labyrinth, because Pan, you can't quite tell if he's being 100% truthful or not. He's like that trickster kind of character where it's like he might be being mischievous or not. He kind of lures her into danger, but then he passes it off afterwards by saying like, yeah, it was kind of necessary in order for you to get the thing. Like, yeah. But yeah, it's the same thing with the heron. He's like saying like, no, you've got to come and do this thing. You're required in order to make this happen. But he's also being very creepy and very nefarious at the same time. Anyway, lures him into this like fantasy realm. Unlike other Miyazaki movies where it's a little more clear, like piece by piece, what's supposed to be happening from beat to beat storyline. It's like not much is explained. There's like, yeah, there's this tower out there. Don't go to the tower. And he's like, well, now I'm going to go to the tower. He goes to the tower. He crawls through this hole, and then he winds up in this completely fantasy world. But this fantasy world is way more dreamlike than anything that Miyazaki or Studio Ghibli has made before. It's way more surreal. Stuff just kind of happens. Stuff is really weird. I know that sounds like it could be anything from like Spirited Away or something like that, but no, trust me, it's weirder. They'll be walking down a hallway, and then the hallway will turn into a forest, and then the forest, depending on which way you go in the forest, will turn into different areas. And you'll wind up in like a castle in one, and it's like it's very like as if you're moving through areas of a dream or something like that. It's very, very dreamlike. The new mother that he's trying to accept, that he doesn't really want to pay much attention to, that he doesn't want to accept, is also pregnant with a new baby, and she gets taken into this fantasy world as well. And there's like a birthing room, and he gets told, don't go into the birthing room. You're not allowed. It's not time. You can't go into the birthing room. And then he tries going into the birthing room anyways. At some point, he finally gets there, and then like she just starts screaming at him. Like she gets really upset that he's there and just starts screaming at him. And it is actually her, but it's like she's under like a spell or something almost. She's like been very like mind corrupted by the dream world that she's in. It's very strange. It's not explained, like I'm saying. It's just like there's this weird Stonehenge looking thing, and he had to get through this gate. There was a bunch of pelicans that tried to eat him when he tried to get through the gate, because
Yeah.
And then he gets through the gate. He gets told, don't go in there. That's the birthing chamber, and she's busy. She can't be disturbed, right? And it's very strange. There's only like these couple scenes of him like approaching his new mother, and one of them takes place earlier in the movie, not in the dream world, where he basically gets told, oh, she's not feeling well with like morning sickness or whatever. She would really like for you to come visit her. And so he's like, fine. He knocks on the door, and then they let him into her room. The second that they let him into her room, I'm looking at just how ornately detailed the backgrounds just in her room are, because the rest of the house is relatively normal looking, and stuff like just beige wood, flat, nothing's very decorative, nothing's very like over the top, gaudy, anything. But in her room specifically, it is just like tapestries that are just like all the detail in the world on them, like ropes and rugs and gilded portraiture and stuff, and like everything is in like just tea sets and that are just all finely detailed and stuff, and just like the amount of detail put into her room that is not in the rest of the house means something. It means something. Usually when something does something like that, it's some sort of class statement. It's like this person keeps all of the like fancy stuff to themselves, like the castle in Aladdin when you see it towering over the slums of Agrabah. It's like kind of like that, I think. So it's like all of this really fancy, ornate, decorative, gilded stuff, very rich, like status symbol stuff, is all kept within her room. And then the rest of the house is just all like the cheap peasanty stuff. Or whatever, even though it's still a nice looking house. It's a very nice looking house, and like it's got this like pond and stuff where the heron is and everything. It's very like, it's a high up house. It's just, there's something going on there with why they chose to decorate her room that way. The only thing that I can think of is like what kind of status like she actually holds. Like maybe the sister wasn't as rich as she is, and maybe she's richer. and that's like a good thing for as far as the husband is concerned. I don't know.
I wonder if that room, even as part of the house, it's still. I feel it still represents like a difference. If we're following the eyes of the boy, she still doesn't really fit in, doesn't belong. She's part of the family, but also not yet accepted.
Like even if the rest of the house and the rest of the family, like him and his dad or whatever, might still feel the same or similar, it's like she's still different.
Yeah.
She's still separate, and this is like a way of showing just how separate she still feels to him.
Right.
Yeah, I could see that. And that usually when they do something like that, it's supposed to mean something. So if you have a better idea on what you think that could mean, like we have our own ideas. I mentioned pelicans earlier. There's a lot of weird bird imagery in this movie. So he's going through this dream world sequence stuff, and it's just kind of like going from like just thing to thing, like without much sense to it. Like winds up on this island, and that's where the pelicans are, and he's trying to get through this gate, but the gate is locked, and then he winds up running into some other person that sails this little like sailboat thing. That's the person that like saves him and tells him not to go in the birthing room, and then she takes him away and onto her sailing boat, and then she's like, we got to catch fish, and then they go and they catch this giant fish, and then they strap it to the side of the fish like Old Man in the Sea style, and then they take it back, and then she's like, now you got to learn how to cook and gut the fish and whatever. And so then he like guts the fish, and then she's like, yeah, this is my job that I developed here in this world, is that I catch the fish because I have the ability to catch the fish, and then I gut the fish, and then I cook the fish, and then I feed the fish to the creatures. Or was it no? She makes stew out of it. Yeah, she makes stew out of it, and like these weird little like soul creatures that are like little white soul baby things. They like consume it, and then they like fly up, and she says that those are like souls that are going to be born in the next world or something like that. So I don't know. That doesn't get explained, but the pelicans start trying to eat the soul babies, and so they start trying to defend the soul babies so that they can ascend and become fully living beings. But then this other girl shows up, and she's got like fire powers, and she like defeats the pelicans with the fire powers. Like, again, like I said, this is completely nonsensical. It's just going from beat to beat. You're just like, you're just following along. You have no idea what's going on. It's not explaining anything. And so the girl with the fire powers is his mom, and that's why she has fire powers. It's a representation of the fire that she died in, basically. And they explain later on, or at some point, that stuff is kind of outside of time in this world, kind of like Narnia, where time moves completely differently. All the characters within this dream world are all different members of this character's family that stumbled upon this dream world at the point at which that they did. But she's a little girl, but has fire powers because she found, and she also knows that she's the boy's mom for some reason, because she's lived in this dream world for so long or whatever. She's been there, and just time doesn't move, so she's just like that same age or whatever. And the other girl that he met, the one that sailed the ship and caught the fish that they had to gut and everything, that was one of the aunties, one of the grannies in the house. Like, so like, but it's just completely different age because of when she came into the world.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's also this weird scene where he stumbles into this cottage type place or something, and there's all these parakeets, because the parakeets were like, they're like full size, like kind of anthropomorphic parakeets almost, and they're like, yes, you're supposed to be here, yes, come on in, yes. And then he like goes, okay, and he comes in, and they're just all like staring at him, and it's all super creepy. And he like comes in, and then he sees this like dinner table with like these, and then they see that they've all got like knives and forks, and they're just gonna eat him. Like that's what the plan is. And then he escapes. I don't remember how. I don't know what the deal with the parakeets are. When the parakeets or any of the birds go back into our regular world through the portal, they turn back into normal versions of those birds.
Interesting.
Except for the heron. The heron's allowed to be weird. And I don't know why. The heron's like a weird troll creature or something that like has a bird exterior as skin that's also clothes. Yeah. So there's all this bird imagery, right? There's the heron, the pelicans, and the parakeet army. For some reason, it's like a whole parakeet kingdom. There's a king. There's a king of the parakeets. I don't know why. I was getting Nutcracker vibes. I don't think there was any intention on it being derived from the Nutcracker, but I was getting like the Mouse King and the Mouse Soldier vibe kind of thing, because you get drawn into this like world of toys or whatever in Nutcracker. Birds. Birds, especially doves, when used symbolically, are referencing some sort of freedom of life, freedom of control. If there's a dove or a bird in a cage, it means that they are lacking that freedom or control of their life. If it's outside of the cage or gets released from the cage, then that means that it's finally free. It's free. Birds are often used for this because they are able to fly freely up in the sky, whereas we are locked to the ground and are not able to be as free as we would like to. We have often looked up to the skies and wished we could fly. In this movie, I feel like the entire point is freedom or control of your life. This boy is trying to figure out his own life. He's not gotten there yet. He's coming of age, but he lost everything that he thought that his life was, his family, his mom, everything that made sense to him. He's lost all of that, and now he's being given something else he has no control over, but he's being told, this is your new life now, and you just deal with it. And he's not allowed to really say anything about it. A lot of it is just about him trying to figure out how to grow up and figure out what his life should be. There's a scene early on in the movie where he gets attacked from because he's an outsider. He's just moved here and he's looked at as like a foreigner or whatever. And he gets attacked by a group of bullies. It's not that bad. He got roughed up, but it's not that bad. On his way home, when he's walking home, he picks up a rock and smashes it against his head, and he starts bleeding profusely out the side of his head. Sometimes, from what I've read and from what I've talked about with some people who know this better, who are like psychotherapists or people that work with people with mental disorders or disabilities or issues that they are struggling with, that sometimes causing self-harm can be an attempt at regaining some control in your life, because he feels like he's lost total control of his life at this point, and he just got beat up at school. He doesn't want to go back to school. So how does he take control of that? Well, he makes it worse so that he doesn't have to go back to school. He injures himself in a way where he's just gets to stay at home. Gets to stay at home, but it sucks. It's really depressing and it's horrible, but I think that that's what the point of that was, of showing it that way, where he's trying to do something that can regain some control of his life. Like, he does this to himself, and as a result, he doesn't have to go back to school and now. But the interesting thing is that up until that point, nothing had been super weird in the movie, but then after he gives himself a serious head injury, then all of a sudden he starts seeing all this weird shit.
Interesting.
Yeah, then all of a sudden the heron starts talking to him. All of a sudden he starts venturing onto this like magical land and stuff. And I don't know if that was intentional. Again, if we were supposed to make it think like he caused himself a head injury and now he's hallucinating or not. Could be. I really think that it's just him trying to show a way of a character trying to have some control over his life and make it something that he wants it to be, or something like that. Cause something to his life for himself for once, instead of it being just always someone else doing something to him. Once it starts getting towards the end of the movie, he comes across the guy who basically created this world, and it's like his great granduncle or something like that. He has got this little tower of blocks, and it's barely balancing, and he's super old, and he's like explaining how he's like been keeping the tower balanced, and how if you don't keep the tower balanced, then everything falls apart, the world falls apart. And it really feels like that whole scene at the end is exactly what this movie's trying to get at. It's trying to get at like the balance of your life and how you can focus on keeping complete control over it. But if you try and keep complete control over every single thing about your life or whatever, then you just can't, because there's things that are out of your control. There will always be things that are out of your control. And if you try and focus on keeping your life in perfect control of exactly what you want, then you're not going to have anything else in your life. This character, he's alone. He's dedicated his entire life to making the perfect world that he wanted. But as a result, he had nobody to share it with. He had nobody to live it with. And now he's going to die, and all he has left is to hopefully pass it on to this relative. And that's the reason why the Heron was trying to bring him this whole time, was he was saying, yes, you're needed at this place, was because he's trying to pass on this world so that the world doesn't fall apart, because this was what was most important to this great granduncle, was this fantasy world that he invented, right? And he wants to pass it on to someone else so that they can take it, because the tower's falling apart. He needs someone else to create stability in the world and keep it alive, because that's what he cares about. And it shows that that's not what you should do in your life, because he ignored his family to do so. Kind of like workaholics. If you focus solely on working for your own life and what you want, and ignoring everyone around you that you should be loving, then you don't have love that you're giving, and you don't have love that you're receiving in your life at all, and that's not good. And the boy kind of understands that, but he doesn't really want to take on this role of being the god of this fantasy world that he's just being given, basically. But the metaphor is that he needs to figure out the balance of control of his own life, where he needs to understand that he can gain some control of his own life, but also understand that some things are out of his control. Then the king parakeet just kind of goes like, all you need is a successor, I can do that. And he just like tries to do it. And the guy's like, no, what are you doing? And he creates the worst tower ever, and then it's going to fall over, and he pulls out his sword and just chops it in half. And it's just like, what the hell? And then the universe just starts deteriorating and falling apart, and they got to get out through the doors as soon as possible. I was rambling these thoughts after I saw this movie to like my friend that I saw it with. I was rambling it to the employees at where we work. And I was talking to one of the employees, and I was saying all this stuff to him about what I thought that the movie was supposed to be about, how it was dealing with all these similar themes that Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli has dealt with in the past, but dealing with them in this seemingly much mature way, where it's trying to get this really like kind of important life message across. But since it's trying to do it in this much more mature way, it's way vaguer and way harder to understand. But when I was going through all these thoughts with this employee, he said that makes a lot of sense based on what the original title was. And I didn't know what the original title of this story was, but it was How Do You Live?
Interesting.
Yeah. Back on the thing about birds, the bird imagery. Throughout the story for a while, the heron is kind of in control of what's going on. He keeps tricking the boy and luring him further and further down the path. But once the boy uses one of the heron's own feathers to fashion an arrow and then shoots it at the heron and pierces his beak, he takes away the heron's ability to fly. And once the heron's ability to fly has been taken away from him, he is under control of the boy. And the boy is like, he's like a slave to the boy all of a sudden. It's like very much kind of goes with the thing that I'm talking about, where like birds being able to fly equals freedom.
Yeah.
Because literally once his flight is taken away, his freedom's taken away.
Interesting.
It takes until when the heron convinces the boy to fix his beak so that he can fly, that then the heron has the ability to try and trick him again. He tries to like one over him and like fly away and be like, see ya, sucker.
This boy, his mom passed. He lives with his dad and his aunt. For him, it feels like his dad's trying to replace the mother.
Yeah.
He's not ready for that yet. At least to him, it looks like she still doesn't belong. Mm-hmm. I have not seen Boy and the Heron, but my initial thought...
Yeah, I apologize.
No, you're good. But the birds represent freedom.
I think.
I was mulling over if it's about acceptance and moving on. Like when they made the Babadook was a big metaphor for acceptance and moving on, dealing with tragedy and not
grief.
Yeah. You know, seeing his mother again, who is throwing fire. But this kid also tries to self-harm. Do you ever see him at any point deny what's going on? What about the birds?
What about the birds?
I think I'm just kind of feeling like I'm bending the puzzle pieces to fit. But the birds, the pelicans denying the babies, they're trying to attack him, trying to stop him.
The pelicans are denying him access to the gate.
There's that. Any of the birds angry?
The heron gets kind of angry.
The parakeets? Did
parakeets
trying to make a deal with him?
Kind of. They come on into the cabin where we're totally going to give you what you're looking for. Yeah, he's totally here. You can come talk to him. Oh, wait, you're just going to eat me? I don't know. I'm trying to make him bend to fit your puzzle pieces. I'm trying to help. He was never really in denial about what happened to his mother.
Okay.
So I was like, I don't know if the 5 stages necessarily fit, but I think that your idea of it being an allegory for him going through his grief and trying to accept change or accept, tragedy or whatever could be what's going on here. It's like, was the guy just obsessed with birds? Like, it seems like he just populated his world with birds to see what would happen. Like, because the parakeets evolve into like anthropomorphic humanoid birds, kind of. They're just kind of like big parakeets. But the pelicans are just pelicans. And the heron is like a weird troll creature. Like I don't even know where the heron came from. Like, did the guy bring them in? Because they're like, the parakeets are like trying to escape with the rest of them as the world's collapsing. And once they go outside the doorway and go back into the regular world, they turn into normal parakeets again. Sorry for going on for a while, but it's a pretty dense and weird movie. I needed to get my thoughts out about it because there's a lot to be had. I've only seen it the once, and it was a few weeks ago, so I do not remember everything off the top of my head very well. I apologize. I tried to do my best, but I wanted to give my, like, not exactly review because, I mean, I did think it was good, but that wasn't the point of what this was. The point of what this was trying to describe in depth what I thought the movie was trying to say, because I feel like it's trying to say a lot, but it's very difficult to analyze all the symbolism. And if you agree with what I had to say, please let me know. If you disagree, please let me know. I want to know either way so that we can discuss it, because if you have a better idea for what the parakeets meant, I really want to know.
Thank you for watching The Real Brain Wrap. I'm Greg.
I'm Ty.
If you like what you've seen, please give us a follow at The Real Brain Wrap on YouTube or right there. Or OBNoot on Instagram, OBNOOT. And until then, keep on watching things and maybe we'll talk about it.
It's true.
It's like a really random board we throw our darts at.
Yeah, we don't pay attention to algorithms or popular data at all of what people are watching or should be making videos on or anything. We make videos about We're Back, a Dinosaur Story and Elemental being Chinatown.
And how Wizard of Oz probably would not have happened unless it was for the success of Snow White.
Whatever we feel like.
Yeah. See you next time.
Sliders.
Sliders.
We're going to talk about sliders and doorways.
And maybe doorways. Hey, Riff Tracks, get on that one.